Hey everybody, it's so good to see each and every one of you again. I am so happy that you have decided to join us here tonight. You are joining the Cleymans, and also we have a very special guest. You'll see this gorgeous woman on the other end, and we'll be very happy to introduce her very soon. But you guys are joining us in a conversation about parenting. Right? It is that word that kind of makes some people shrink a little bit. Exactly. And in many families across the world, there are thousands of you that, yes, that is your reality. And that's okay. We want to actually celebrate co-parenting around the world and actually bring some peace into your situation.
I think that as if that is possible.
Exactly. Maybe in your case, if you're watching, maybe it seems absolutely ludicrous to even imagine, but we would like to challenge that thought tonight.
Yeah, that's why we brought this expert online.
Yes.
For us, for you, so that we can deeply interrogate her into what are those tips and tricks? How can we co-parent in a peaceful way?
Yes.
Can we? That would be my first question. But
exactly. But really quickly, before we get there, before we introduce our guest, we'll just briefly introduce ourselves. For those of you that are new watching, I'm Cheyenne.
My name's Kim.
And we are
Cleymans.
That's right. We didn't even rehearse that, I promise. And we are a doubly blended family. What we mean by that is we've got two blends going on. So our first blend is that Kim has a beautiful, almost 13-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. Yeah. And so we are blended in that way. And we also have a fantastically gorgeous, I'm a little biased, but son together. Mason, who is 18 months. And then we have our double blend because we're also from different cultures and different countries. Yeah. And so Kim spreekt in Nederlands, which means basically I'm probably not saying it right, but he speaks Dutch. Thank you. Thank you. And where are you from, baby?
Belgium. Europe, in the heart, in the center of it all. And on the other side of the Atlantic.
That's right, because you guys, if you haven't been able to tell from my accent yet, I am from the U.S., from the United States of America, and we actually live here, though, back in Kim's hometown here in Belgium. Yeah.
But enough about us.
Exactly. We want to know more about our expert on the line today. She is joining us all the way from the great state of Colorado, the Rocky Mountains. We love that state, but we love this woman even more. So without further ado, please, Katie, would you mind saying hello to everyone?
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie, Colorado extraordinaire. I am the founder of Co-Parenting Peacefully, which mainly operates on Instagram. I'm trying to change that. But my goal is to help all of you co-parent peacefully. And it's possible, even though it might not seem like it. I promise you, it can be done.
Okay.
Exactly.
Good to know.
And Katie knows a thing or two about this because you have been through this journey and are still on this journey yourself. And would you mind sharing with everybody a little bit about your family?
Yeah. So I have been co-parenting now for, I always have to count it out, about 4.5 years. And things were crazy in the beginning. They were hard. I always felt like a victim. My ex-husband walked all over me. It was, probably your typical co-parenting relationship, at least in the beginning. And it took a really long time for me to move past the end of the relationship, which I think had some to do with my picking and poking at my ex-husband. And so about 4 years in, I think maybe last summer, I really started to grow and heal and really figure out boundaries are where it's at for me. And I think for most people. So that really kind of turned everything around when I started with the boundaries and with the just communicating differently and things like that.
Wow. Wow. You are not alone in that. I think boundaries is like a big buzzword that we hear out there, right? In the parenting community. And I think so many people know okay, I'm supposed to do this thing, but what is it? And what does it look like? And it sounds like something maybe happened in your life that caused you to realize, okay, I need to put some of these up. Was there a catalyst or something that you'd say that a year ago that just kind of brought that realization to you?
That's a great question. I think I finally just got tired of allowing someone to dictate my time and my life and control me. And it wasn't necessarily, I don't necessarily think he meant to do it, but I think I just always was like, yes, of course, I'll help you. Sure. Whatever you need. And that led to a lot of resentment on my end. So I finally just got so tired of feeling that way, and of also, I'm sure some other maybe moms and stepmoms, stepdads can understand, but when you're the one doing a lot of the extra work, it's even on their time, it gets a little bit stressful and you get a little angry. So it was just kind of like the culmination of all of those things.
Yes. Yeah, it can be very draining, very just emotionally, physically draining. And it can be, I feel like it can be really hard when you realize at the end of the day, we experience this with a lot of our students too, when you realize like you may not be the one that is doing or saying all of those things, but at the end of the day, it's like when you realize, wow, maybe I am allowing this to happen. You know, it's hard to confront yourself, but the more and more people we talk to that have successfully co-parented well and peacefully, as you share, they start with themselves. They start with taking ownership, you know. Would you say that that was a little bit of part of your journey too?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think for me, therapy was really important, and that's kind of where it started. And interestingly, we started kind of on the relationship and letting that go. But within those first few months, I was like, dang, I can see that part of the problem is me, even though I really didn't want to admit it, right? That's so hard. But part of it was me. And that was a part that I had to grow through and really go through.
Yeah, grow and go.
So easy to blame the other one, right? It's not their fault.
Yeah, it is.
Easy thing to say in the world. It's your fault.
Yeah, I always, I don't ever heard this as a kid. Maybe, I don't know if it's a thing here in Belgium, but I'll never forget. I don't know who it was in my life, but they used to say, when you point your finger at someone else, watch out, because you've got like 3 pointing back at you. You know, when you're pointing like this, I'm like, oh darn, that's so true. Like, yeah. And you don't, it's hard to confront yourself, and it's hard to confront, I think, your past and your past mistakes. And you know, in your personal situation, Katie, did you know, or did you realize that you hadn't let your relationship go?
I think I knew. I knew that, and it's funny because I wanted the divorce, but I really could not let go. I think there was a lot of crazy that happened when we were married, and a lot of kind of emotional manipulation of me on the other end. So I just couldn't let that part go. And it wasn't until the therapist came along to say like, hey, this is what I see happening, for me to be like, oh man, that's why I am having a hard time letting go, because he won't let me go. So that was kind of where the boundaries and the reducing communication and things like that really started to make a difference.
Kind of like to protect yourself. That's what it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's so amazing to hear from your story, and your story is so empowering, but also not necessarily unique in the fact that sometimes we just need someone to come alongside, whether it's a therapist or a coach, you know, someone to come along and point out things that we're not quite seeing, or maybe we are, but we don't necessarily want to acknowledge. And it's, I feel like you get it. You're like, yes. Yeah. Like, so been there too.
And I also feel like it can't always be friends or family, because you need like a third neutral party who can point out to you what they see. And that's very different than your mom being like, oh, he's a dick. That's why. And you're like, well, okay, but
that's not helpful.
Yeah.
But it's so true. That's definitely something that we had to discover, I think, along the way too. We're realizing through a lot of our client stories that sometimes, the people that love you, they're just a little too close to the situation, right? Like their number one goal is to love you and protect you. Where I feel like a coach or a therapist, number one goal is to like help you heal and help you overcome, you move forward in this situation, you know? And so, if you guys are out there, you happen to be listening to 3 coaches right now. So of course we support that, but ultimately we just want you to know like that sometimes is the first step. I feel is like, you know, as cliche as it sounds, admitting you have a problem, but then also like connecting with others so that sometimes it can help you, right, become more aware and have that mirror of like
way faster
what's going on.
You would have to do it all alone, figure it on your own. So coming to that realization that you yourself also are part of the problem, part of the solution, what would be a second thing to then, or what did you do maybe from there on out?
So you mean like after therapy and coming to the realizations and things like that? Really practice, which sounds, you can tell someone to like, let's make boundaries and let's try to stop communicating the way that we are. And let's try to do X, Y, and Z. But I think what people don't realize is it's not an immediate fix. You have to practice. Yeah. And that's hard because we want it to be done right now. We want things to be perfect right now. And that practice piece was so important for me.
Okay. Practice with a friend or with a coach or
with him, with my co-parent.
Like
practice.
Over and over, I think probably without reciprocation, I can imagine.
Yes.
But not expecting that reciprocation also.
No, it was difficult. When you first start with your boundaries and with your, you know, changing your relationship, a lot of times the other parent isn't aware of what you're doing. So, you know, so they're like, what the heck is going on? Why is it different? What's happening? And you just have to push through and keep going. And that's what I mean by practice. It's not always reciprocated well on the other party.
Yeah. And I'm thinking maybe before we go a little bit too much further, how about can you give us like your definition, Katie's definition of what is a boundary? It is something, that buzzword, right? People talk about, people Google, but what would you define as a boundary?
So my definition of a boundary is a particular rule or, rule that you use to teach someone else how to treat you. So this is something that you do that tells someone else what you will accept and what you won't accept from them, or from yourself too. But
wow, what you will or will not accept. That's empowering.
Oh,
it's
totally.
Incredible.
Absolutely. Okay. I see you using that word learn a lot, and I find that very remarkable. We teach them how to treat us.
Yeah. And so I think my next question would be, so how do you do that? How do you enforce your boundaries once you've named them, right? I think part of that, I'm sure, is part of a discovery is like, what is a boundary? What do I need to, put up? Like maybe that's a better question before we even ask, how do you enforce them? Katie, how would someone be able to choose the right boundaries for them? Like how did you go about that journey?
So I don't remember what I was reading, but when I first was diving into boundaries, I read somewhere that you should make boundaries based off of what is hurting you or what is making this relationship more difficult for you. So when you think back, like, where does my co-parenting relationship impact me the most, like negatively? That's probably where you need some boundaries. Where does it hurt?
Yeah,
so
very practical.
And it works.
Yeah, if you can just ask yourself like those two questions, like, you'll be a lot further, I think, along the way. And something we hear from our clients sometimes is that they don't know what boundary to choose. They don't know what is right, and then they'll read articles online like, oh, this person does that and this person does that. So I love your definition. It makes it very personal, and I think it really gives people something simple, like something. I think we all know what hurts us. We all know maybe like what frustrates us, what steals our joy a little bit in conversations or in situations. And so just starting there is a great way, I think, for someone to finally like own their boundaries, And
would that be something that I would admit to my co-parents?
Like specifically
I'm having a hard time with this, or
You could, but I think it really depends on your relationship with your co-parent. So for me, because there was a lot of emotional manipulation, I couldn't say, I need this from you because it would get turned around. And so I just had to put them in place really without him knowing why. And to some people, I think that's really hard. They want to know why this boundary is in place. They want to know why. But you just have to know your co-parent and your situation well enough to know if it's wise for you to tell them.
Okay.
Or even to maybe use the word boundary. I feel like that also can be a trigger. I would feel some people, especially because boundaries are not, I think, fully understood by everyone and also not supported. I can imagine sometimes it's like that. What is that? It's like a boomerang effect. You tell someone you want a boundary and they're going to be like, oh yeah, well, boundaries are meant to be pushed. I mean, I think even we do that as like teenagers, right? Our parents put up boundaries and we want to test them and push them. And obviously, hopefully as adults, we evolve a little bit and mature. But yeah, that's, I think, something you also reminded me of, and everyone watching and listening to is that yes, like it's like sometimes you don't need to necessarily name it, you just need to do it in the doing.
And to be truthful, I have never told him this is a boundary, I'm accepting this, I'm not accepting that. Like, I just do it. And it has slowly evolved to the point where he has learned, he really has learned pretty well what I'll talk about, what I'll, all of the things, parenting time, everything that we kind of would argue about, he has slowly stopped because I've just stopped reacting and stopped putting up with it. And so it's really been fantastic. Wow. But it's hard at first.
Yeah. You're reminding me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just so excited about this topic because it is it's like what you're sharing makes sense, but for so many people, it is revolutionary, right? Like in their relationship. I mean, you remind me so much of, my background is I used to be a trainer. I used to train people in the gym, and it just reminds me how many times, like, whether it was myself, I was training myself, my own body, or other people, it was like, you have to have that long goal, that goal in sight, and keep doing the things even when you don't see the results. Yeah. And that's hard when you have a force maybe working against you sometimes, or maybe it felt that way sometimes.
Yeah. And the thing that I always tell my clients too, that might be important for people to know about boundaries, is that especially if you are placing boundaries with someone that has never had them before, or they don't know you to ever have had boundaries, or maybe they're high conflict, they're going to push back. So they know what usually works to get you to do what they want. And when they see that you're not allowing that anymore, they're going to push you harder. So there's like this uphill climb, and then finally it just kind of like drops off and things are easy. But it took a long time for that pushing on my co-parent's end to stop before he finally realized that he wasn't going to get what he wanted.
Okay. Do you think that there is like this magic phrase that I can use to like any abusive co-parent to like let them know that I'm not going to be a pushover anymore?
You mean business?
I mean, you certainly could. But I think it depends so much on your co-parent, but it's really important. So let's say that every time you guys get on the phone, your co-parent like yells at you and screams at you or whatever, that it's very easy for you to say, I'm not going to be spoken to like this. We can talk later, and hang up. Like there's just some little thing that you can say or do, especially in situations like that where you're safe, you're on the other end of the phone. It's safe for you to say, this is not okay, and then hang up.
Yes.
So situations like that, definitely. And eventually they'll learn, hopefully, that's
eventually they'll, because they always have like the children as bait, maybe using them as threats or whatever, and you feel like you always have to step into their.
Do you know, I feel like I see that more with dads. I see a lot of dads who feel like the mom is like in control. And so I think they give up a little bit more control than they realize.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always because the kids are the common denominator. So it's very easy to put them in the middle and then guilt trip one of you into feeling like when you make a choice, it's bad for your kids. Or when you set a boundary, then what's going to happen next? How is my kid going to get treated? What's the, you know, and that's again, like you have to know your co-parent well enough to know, are they threatening me like with court? Are they threatening me with this, or are they actually going to do it? Because then it's a different ball game, kind of. It's a different situation.
Thank you. Wow. I was not aware of that.
Yeah. No, I think you're almost answering the question I had at the top of my head is, how do you enforce boundaries, right? It's like, but I think from what I'm just learning from you, just by you talking it out, is just it sounds like consistency.
Yeah. And the thing is too, when I was talking about practice earlier, it's new for you too, to set these boundaries. So there are going to be times when you don't enforce them and you're not consistent, especially at first, but you just have to keep at it. It's like anything else.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. It's something that it takes time, and it just sounds like it's that repetition, like that time and that repetition and really owning it just sounds like if you do it properly and you do it well, it has to be so empowering, because that's all I hear is like someone finally taking that their respect back. You know, and I think so many people go through a divorce and they lose it. I mean, you know, firsthand, and Kim, you as well. I speak of it secondhand just from living in a step family, but I know that there's so much pain and loss and sorrow and grief and guilt.
Exactly. Also, that,
you know,
grief is the word that you used.
Yeah.
When we're talking about boundaries, do you think that like boundaries, like how do I say this, how do I ask this, towards that grief part, do I also need to protect myself from,
almost like putting a boundary around not a person but maybe like a feeling, you mean? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
It's like you said, Katie, it's like some people, they know what buttons to push, they know what works, they'll push harder, and they know that they'll get you with the grief bomb time and time again.
Sorry.
Do it.
That's why I don't talk about anything in my life other than my kids to my co-parent, because when I gave him that information about a job or my family or my friends, it was just another way to be able to kind of like worm in. So yeah, I put up a boundary around my personal life. We don't talk about it. I don't talk about dating. I don't even think he knows what I do for a living. And that works for me because it disengages me from that emotional aspect, and it allowed me to really separate.
Kind of like close all channels except for the kids.
Yeah, exactly. And I will stand and talk to him for 45 minutes about the kids. I don't have any issue with that at all. Same with his girlfriend. In fact, I like his girlfriend better, so I'll talk more to her than I will to him. And yeah, so I think it's really important, if you are experiencing that resentment and grief, you have to protect yourself. And if that means putting boundaries up around certain areas of your life, do it.
Yeah, do what works for you, what you need, and it's so true, because in these situations it's like everyone has to figure out what works for them, like you said, and what works with co-parent, because we had a recent another co-parenting expert that we interviewed recently, and she has a very healthy relationship with her co-parent. They both seem to have just a really positive outlook of each other, and so she actually felt like she was when they only talked about the child, that it was a transactional relationship, and she didn't feel comfortable with that. But again, her big statement, kind of like you just made, was, but it depends on your co-parent. Like, she realizes, I have a very special situation. I am very thankful and very blessed for my co-parent and where he's at right now. Maybe it'll change. I mean, they're both single parents, and I think dynamics change too. I think sometimes different people in the family, you have different children. And so thank you for pointing that out, because some people, I think, would love just a formula of like, okay, I do this, and then that happens. But unfortunately, life is not that easy, right?
Yeah. And it depends too. One other thing that I think is really important is that my co-parents' boundaries with everything have changed now that there's a new partner. And I understand that. Like, I used to be allowed to come inside of the house, and now if it's freezing cold, I can come in. But otherwise, I just kind of stand on the doorstep. And I noticed those shifts happening when she came in, and that's okay with me, because they deserve to have their own space and their own, whatever. But I think that's really hard too for some people, is like, when new partners are introduced, they have a really hard time when those boundaries get set.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's hard because it's like you're changing, almost like the equilibrium changes. What you've kind of gotten used to is all of a sudden changed, but also there's like a third or a fourth party all of a sudden. So now you're not just talking about two adult boundaries. You could be talking about 3 or 4 at this, and I'm so glad you brought up your ex's boundaries, because that was a huge question on my mind during this entire interview, is like, so what does someone do when their boundary maybe conflicts with their co-parents, or like maybe overlaps a little bit?
So I always say, I don't know how it works where you guys are, but when we're talking about boundaries, we have to really be careful with our court order too. Because we have to set boundaries that work within the parameters of the court order. So my general rule is, if my boundary doesn't hurt the kids and it falls within my court order, it's fine. So if my co-parent doesn't like it, oh well.
Right.
Right. I mean, and eventually you'll adjust. And that's what I've seen with my co-parent. And when I tell you that the manipulation and the gaslighting, I mean, I'm seeing a trauma therapist. It's been a lot to overcome.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, but it works. And I don't worry too much about whether it works for him.
You can't. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can't. You probably did that a lot in your marriage, and now it's like, that's part of the freedom when you get divorced, right? I mean, it's hard because you are attached to this person for the rest of your life because you share children. But it's like, it's so awesome to hear though that now you get that opportunity to only care about yourself and your own healing, and so much of what I also see people who have left a broken relationship or have left a marriage, is also a learning process too, because when you're married, you are, you aim to to become one, and you aim to do this together, and whatever reason it doesn't work, and you still have to do co-parenting, you try to do it together, but everything else, it probably should in a healthy way fall away.
Yeah. And like we've talked about, that so depends on your co-parenting relationship. Like, I get a lot of DMs from people who are like, I can't believe I've never considered like that you talked to, I don't know if you saw my story today, but I spoke with my co-parent's girlfriend about boundaries and about, things like that, because I certainly understand that boundaries exist between him and her, and me and her, and him and me. And so there's like, we discussed that, but that might not be something that works for your co-parenting relationship, or for people are always so surprised at how different every relationship is, but we're all different people. So
yeah, it's so true. It's like every person is different. And the thing that I always think about when I think about relationships is just like relationships evolve. Like we evolve too as human beings. So I feel like there could be boundaries that maybe we always need. And perhaps, I don't know if you've experienced this, maybe, would you say like, have any of your boundaries like shifted or changed in the 4 years since you've co-parented?
Yeah, for sure. I used to not answer the phone after certain times because I was being called all day long. And as he learned that I was not going to pick up the phone until I had listened to a voicemail that told me there was a reason to call back, a valid reason, because you know how that goes. Those phone calls stopped coming so often. And so now I feel okay answering the phone because there's typically a good reason for me to answer it. So I do think that you can reflect and you can be flexible with boundaries at some point, but you have to know, you have to really be careful, because it could have been very easy for me to get trapped in the picking up the phone every 3 hours or every 2 hours when I got a call. But he has learned how this works now. So that one worked out.
Yeah.
Earlier you told me this pattern that you see more often with men.
Mm-hmm. Oh, are you
so
still there?
Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
No worries. There you
go. Okay. I thought I had everything frozen. Okay, continue.
Yeah. Okay. I was hoping that we could have this conversation a bit longer. But I was wondering, is there some pattern that you see with women?
Yes. What I see with women is that they have a really hard time letting go of control. And so they try to control everything. They try to control, and this isn't every woman, but letting go of their kids and letting them just be in someone else's environment is hard. And so they try to control dad. They try to control what happens at dad's house. They try to control, there's all of this stuff that they're trying to keep control of, and it makes everything 50 times worse. And then, like I said, then sometimes the dads are like, oh crap, she's, I gotta do what she says, otherwise she's gonna get control of the kids, or she's gonna take them away from me. And so there's like this cycle that I see quite often that happens. I don't know if you guys have experienced that or have clients like that.
Yes, we do, unfortunately, because like you said, it is it's a cycle, and we sometimes, I think, we see it as it's such an easy hamster wheel to get on, and then you're going around and around in the same pattern, and it's hard to get off when you keep going in that vicious cycle, and that continues to repeat.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you kind of you gave a little bit of great insight, I think, earlier, just about what you see with the men, doing, and then with the women, with women, and especially moms. Like I really can only fathom, because I have my own little 18-month-old now, and I can't imagine also myself letting him go live in another home for a couple days, a week. I mean, how long, every situation's different. And I can imagine how I would struggle with control as well. Like I definitely can empathize with moms in that way. Is there anything, like any kind of a tip or advice that you would give a mom in that situation of how to let go or loosen up?
That's really difficult, especially if you're involved in a high conflict relationship. It's so hard knowing how that person has treated you. It's really hard to trust that they're going to treat your children well. But I really think a coach or a therapist is a great thing in this situation. But if you're looking for something that you can do just when you're like home and you're panicked and you're wanting to call all the time, I think it's a great idea to like phone a friend or get some exercise, or maybe journal about what it is that we're worrying about and how it is what I'm worrying about. Can I prevent it? Is there anything I can do about it? That used to help me a lot. Like, I don't know what's happening over there, but there's nothing I can do about it. So
yeah, at the end of the day, I think we'll drive ourselves crazy if we kind of try to control, and then it's like your whole life when your children aren't there. I can imagine then it's controlled by that situation, and it makes it, I'm sure, hard to live a healthy, productive life when your children aren't there.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that was hard for me to learn too, is to like enjoy my time alone and to be able to let that go. And then also to really enjoy the time that they come back, because you can spend all your time worrying about the day that they're going to leave you again. So it's just, man, it's a cycle, the hamster wheel, like you said. It's really hard to get off of.
It is. And something we tell our clients all the time, though, we're like, cut yourself some slack. Like, this is so not something that anyone does overnight. I think your beautiful example shines to that this has been a journey. It really is, I think I'm like the queen of analogies tonight. It's like a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Because it's so many levels, and I think just as humans, we just change and we evolve, and it's like at different points of this step family life, it's like you'll be different, so you'll see things differently, or you'll maybe notice different things letting go, and then in the process your sweet babies are growing too, and so like, oh, I know, right? Sorry to remind you, but every mom, every parent knows that, sees it happening before their eyes. And I know it's so hard because then they change and they grow into opinions and their own personality, which is beautiful, but also an added challenge too,
Definitely. Yeah. It's the whole thing. The other thing to remember is like your relationship with your co-parent is always evolving. And I think we talked about that a little bit, but everybody's growing and changing. And that can be really hard too, to like watch. I talked about this a little bit, but watching maybe your ex-partner get into a relationship that is healthy can be hard, because you're like, well, why couldn't we do that? Why couldn't we get it together? So there are just all of these things, good reasons for boundaries, right? To like protect yourself.
Protect yourself and your heart. And we've talked about that too, how it's almost like to have a healthy co-parenting relationship, we feel you have to also allow your co-parent to change, because it's so easy for us to think that one, and I'm sorry, I can't speak from experience, but just from coaching and seeing Kim's experience, it can be so easy to look at this person for the rest of your life and their lives as who they were when you divorced them. But more likely, hopefully they won't be. And sometimes I feel that we also have to give people permission to change, almost like they could be changing on the outside with other people, but if like we're still trying to keep them stuck in this rut of like, well, no, I know you inside and out, it's very hard, right, to have anything healthy come through that. And you made such a great point. It can be, I think, really hard when you see your co-parent change in a healthy way, in maybe a way that you wished along the way they would have changed or been for you. Like, who is this guy? My gosh, I wanted you to be this way all along. And also support that, support that on the side, that it's like at the end of the day, any kind of evolving maybe in that way, healthiest for your kids.
Yeah. I think, yeah. And I feel like that's one of the hardest things for when there's conflict, like between a stepmom and a bio mom, or oftentimes I feel like that has to do with mom watching them do their thing and they're like getting it right, and they have a healthy relationship and things are going well. And there's just that piece of mom who's like, that's all I wanted. But and so it's hard to let that go and then recognize, like you said, sometimes people change, and I'm sort of watching an evolution happen with my co-parent as we speak. Does that mean I'm ever going to let my guard down? No. But I can be happy for him, and I can see that some things are changing, and I think that's fantastic. But that doesn't change necessarily my need for certain boundaries to stay in place, at least for a while.
Yes.
At all. at all.
Yeah. No,
Exactly.
that's really that's golden right there too, because I think that is the best case scenario, is that you do see your co-parents start to evolve and start to grow and mature and maybe perhaps become healthier and heal from their own wounds that happened, whether from your relationship or even their childhood or all those things. But it's so important, I think you said it spot on, to make sure though that you still take care of you, and that your health has to matter the most, your healing has to matter the most, and that you said something I love, that you can still be happy for them, but you still keep your boundaries up, and you should keep your boundaries up. So
Yeah.
Well, ladies, I have a feeling that we can go on for a lot longer, but if with your permission both, I'm going to slowly start to round up, because I have maybe one.
okay.
I have two more questions for you, Katie.
Okay.
First one would be like, what question did we forget to ask you tonight? Was there something that you wanted to share?
I really want to share again how important it is when you are evaluating your own co-parenting relationship to remember that there's no pattern, there's no right or wrong, and there's no just because someone else believes that this would work better doesn't mean that it will. You guys know yourselves and your co-parent and your relationship better than anyone else. So don't be afraid to do what works for you.
Okay. On that regard, I also remember to get professional when you need.
When you need it, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, not at all. If I want to know more about this, is there somewhere where I can turn to, or how can I indulge myself in boundaries thing?
So I do have a website, coparentingpeacefully.com, and then I also have an ebook that kind of runs through everything you need to know about boundaries, from what they are to how to set them, enforce them, flex them when you need to. And it's really cheap. It's $3.99 US. So it's, nothing.
I know getting our copy. I actually briefly looked this up on your website, and like, guys, it is amazing. I love that you had the little brain dumps and the charts, and it makes it so simple. I feel it simplifies boundaries, like the whole conversation. So much of what we've talked about tonight, I feel like this is like a tangible guide to really give anybody watching like the next step. Like, how do you then do this in your own household, in your own life? Like, there you go. The joke is not a handbook. Well, you know what? Boundaries just got one.
You got it.
Thanks to Parenting Peacefully.
That's right. Yeah.
Co-parenting peacefully. I think I can remember that.
Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll be easy to remember, because we all want to co-parent peacefully, and we can do it.
Exactly.
We can do it.
Doable. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the ebook is like, it's a no-brainer. Like, it's absolutely.
You guys should all get it.
Yes, ma'am.
Seriously, I'm like $3.99 to that can change 399 of my days or something to be less stressful. It's like and more. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So guys, if you do want to continue this conversation and connect with Katie, like, she also has an Instagram that you can also find her at Co-Parenting Peacefully. I got you, girl. I'll be a little
Thank
PR.
you.
But no worries. We're so thankful that you spent this time with us today. We hope that we get a chance to chat again and, continue this conversation, because it is so needed and it's so important. And we just thank you for all that you do and all that you give the world.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you and all of your content. Your double blended family is amazing. Oh my gosh, I love following you guys.
Likewise.
Powerhouse Katie there.
That's right. And this is for anyone watching, this is how you continue to heal, how you continue to grow, is surround yourself with like-minded people. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to, ask for help. And if you want some help from people who have been there and can give you some great help of how to move forward, please reach out to either of us, and definitely reach out to Katie, because she won't steer you wrong. And as you can see, she's totally relatable and so easy to talk to. So Again, thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We are the Cleymans, and we'll be connecting with you all very, very soon.
God bless you.